And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers, fly!
We don't need no stinking intro. What we need right now is the roll of Booster 14 to the launch site, just on its way mere moments ago. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be your host for this roll stream here, happening just before 10 p.m. Central Time in Starbase, 11 p.m. Eastern. Go ahead and say all your it's oranges right now in chat, but as long as we got the 5x5s, glad you can hear me. Also joining me for this live stream is D Wise. D, how's it going?
It is going pretty well. Great to see this booster rolling. Happy to be here this evening as we watch preparations for Flight 7.
Oh, that's crazy to believe already. And a huge shout out to Kevin Michael Reed for getting us on the air, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers to make this all happen. Oh, so, reminder, if you have any questions, you can tag at NASASpaceflight. One thing that might also help is you can tag me at Sawyer Rosenstein as well, and at DWise, and we will see, hopefully, all of your chats as well and get to as many of those questions as we can. But, just for those joining in, D, this is potentially the only roll that we might expect to Booster 14, is it not?
Well, I don't want to say only roll because I would hope that we get a rollback after a successful flight and catch. So hopefully we get another roll, but hopefully that roll is a while into the future because if they roll this thing out and static fire it, there's no reason necessarily they would have to roll it back just to roll it out again for launch. So yeah, it seems like it would roll out, do a static fire, stay there for launch, and then, like I said, hopefully be caught and roll back after a successful catch.
That is what we're hoping, that for Flight 7, this is the sole roll to the pad. And as you can see, it is already booking it here. So here's a question from Six String Simpleton. Do we know what testing is left for Flight 7 vehicles? And I guess the better question is, what testing has been done so far?
Yeah, so we've got a static fire here coming up. I believe we've got ship static fires and we've got ship rolls, all that sort of stuff coming up. We know they've been working hard for the preparations. We had a very short turnaround between Flight 5 and 6. They sort of had those vehicles ready. This time around with a version 2 or a block 2 or a Starship 2, however you want to refer to the second iteration of the ship itself. Things might be a little bit different, but I'm not quite sure.
I feel like in terms of the testing timeline, we'll probably see the same events. The question is just going to be how quickly do we get to them? Because it seemed like for Flight 6, it felt almost instantaneous, although most of the hardware had previously been tested before Flight 5, if I recall, while they were waiting for regulatory approval.
Yeah, so they had that longer of a wait between Flight 4 and 5. They were, as you said, waiting for regulatory approval. It was looking like it was going to be November, and then all of a sudden, Flight 5 came out of nowhere because the timeline moved forward more than a month, and those moves to the left are very, very rare in spaceflight. And so, basically, the timeline for launch shifted solely because of that regulatory change, and because they had been waiting for so long, they had Flight 6 basically ready, and that's why we were able to see Flight 6 happen barely a month after Flight 5. That was an incredibly rapid turnaround. Now, they haven't done the same level of prep and testing, so this time around it's going to be, as we currently understand it, January 11th is the no earlier than date, so it could, of course, push past that point, but they've got testing they have to do here, so it's looking like closer to a 2-month gap, which, I mean, still, that's a pretty fast ramp up for a massive orbital vehicle like this.
Yeah, that is indeed quite impressive, especially, like you said, it's world's largest rocket. We had a launch turnaround of a little over a month, and now we're talking a little over 2 months while introducing a brand new variant of the vehicle. I mean, that's pretty darn cool.
Absolutely. So, ship, of course, is the big change here, whereas the booster is still the version 1 of the booster. So we're gonna see at least one, maybe a couple flights of the sort of mix-matched ship and booster with a newer version ship on top of an older version booster before we expect to see any sort of upgrades to the booster to match version 2 of the ship.
Yeah, because I see people asking if there's any changes that are going to be made to the quick disconnect. I'm assuming most of them would be talking about the ship quick disconnect. Goodness gracious. um, for that newer variant. I don't know if we know any update on that yet, do we?
I don't think we have any solid information. I know Jack and the team out there are going to be keeping a close eye, so whenever we see the ship roll around, we will be certainly looking, and if there are any sort of changes, I'm sure that SpaceX wants to keep everything as similar as possible unless they have a reason to change it. Of course, with version 2 of the ship, they have a reason to change the flaps, but if they don't have a reason to change the quick disconnect, there's no reason to update it. That means that they would have to do extra changes to the towers, and so that's just extra work. Now, they have done changes to the flaps, so they are pushed back. The forward flaps are pushed back on the booster to form more of an acute angle, so they're a little bit more out of the airstream. And so the pretty unique change. I think it makes the ship look quite a bit cooler personally. But now we know those forward flaps. Do we know of too many other changes here with version 2 of the ship, Sawyer?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be the parts with the heat shield. We'll see if they learned anything from the last flight of whether they plan to continue to remove or re-add any of those tiles where they saw the thermal heating. Beyond that, it'll be kind of wait and see, which means you'll just have to keep watching Starbase Live to find out.
Yeah, because with Flight 6, they basically just removed huge patches of the tiling, exposing way more stainless steel to basically figure out how the stainless steel holds up during re-entry, and of course also last time they had a different angle during re-entry just to test out the ship's systems, see how well it performed, and from everything we saw, it performed really well. They had their banana payload, and they had a soft splashdown in the ocean, and so that looks good. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have all of those tiles removed on the newer ships, though, but that's important as they work towards the point of recovering ships in addition to boosters, because we know that the arms clamp together, and for a little bit of the booster below those pins sort of scrape up along the stainless steel, and they can't really do that with tiles without risking damage, and so that would create a challenge for reuse. So like I said, they needed to test if just the stainless steel was okay in those sort of positions, so that they have a smooth place for the bumpers on those chopsticks to glide against before it's caught.
Also, I have to just point out the craziness of the fact that they had to go through regulatory approval to launch a singular, not real banana. The fact that they had to go through all these different government agencies, get it signed off, approved, checked, proven that it can be in space without causing damage to any hardware for a banana.
Well, it definitely seems silly, and when you put it in the context of, yeah, they just have like a fake banana. It definitely is silly. However, if you look at it in the grander scheme of things, we know that they're getting approved for like specific vehicle configurations. They got the approval for Flight 5 and 6 at the same time, and they had approval for a couple specific changes for Flight 6. But if you're all of a sudden adding a payload, no matter how silly... Now take a look at that. That's Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Getting some excellent footage. I forgot to... did we say at the start of the stream that Jack's out in the field tonight?
I don't believe we did, which, by the way, folks, Jack is out in the field tonight.
Yeah. So definitely it seems silly to have to do a ton of paperwork for a little fake banana. But if it were even a test payload, it makes sense, whether it's FCC permits for any radio frequencies that are emitted in space, or I mean there are so many things that need to be accounted for with most payloads, so they can't just wave off and say, hey, we require paperwork for most payloads, but don't worry about it here. No, there are definitely requirements that, as silly as it is, need to be signed off.
Yeah, the same was done, I believe, for the original Wheel of Cheese on the debut Dragon flight, as well as the Roadster on Falcon Heavy's demo flight.
Yeah, and with that Falcon Heavy, they did a lot of preps, is my understanding, to the Roadster ahead of it going to space, because they couldn't quite just send a Tesla as is up there, because they have the batteries, which aren't necessarily set up or space rated, all that sort of stuff. So I believe they actually had a lot of preparation they had to do for the Roadster.
Yeah, that was... It's not the exact Tesla that would be roadworthy, but it was definitely spaceworthy.
It certainly was, and wasn't it playing Starman on the way up?
Yes, it was. They had Life on Mars, I believe, on the webcast, and then Starman playing from the Roadster until the battery died. Now,
That's awesome.
I do want to point something out. The action isn't just happening at Starbase. As you know, Dee and I are both part of the Cape team. Dee more so than I, because I live a little south of it. But New Glenn is currently undergoing testing as we speak over on Space Coast Live. So someone asked a question. Dee, I'll throw it to you first, and I'll give you my opinions. Which happens first, Flight 7 or the first flight of Glenny?
Oh, you said Glenny. Okay.
I had to add
my
controversy.
All right. It's really a coin toss in my head. I'm not sure, because we knew that New Glenn was trying to target this year, and now it's really not looking like this year. Of course, there's New Glenn on the pad. It seems like they're doing some testing tonight. There's also, at some point, a static fire coming up. But they have this testing to do before they can go into launch, but they already do have the vehicle integrated. So if they go to early January, it could really be a coin toss between the two of them. However, I think it's more likely that New Glenn pushes than it is that we get a major push to Flight 7.
Yeah, I mean, both of them, that's the catch, is that there is regulatory approval needed for both. One, with the changes to the ship and potential trajectory changes if they do any. And secondly, the fact that New Glenn has never flown at all yet. So there's a lot that has to be proven still. I think both vehicles are going to push towards the end of January, beginning of February. My guess would be, and I know this is horrible for you and Max, but I would think New Glenn within a week after Starship. But
So
Starship,
there's
yes,
no catch on New Glenn. You said there's a catch. There's no catch.
Oh my gosh, I got out pun tokened by Kevin Michael Reed.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
He jumped into our comms channel just to say that and left.
Yeah, he left at the very end of that. I think there's a good chance that these two launches are incredibly close together, making a trip between Texas and the Cape a time-sensitive endeavor.
Yeah, that's why I said it's kind of I hope it isn't as rough for you and Max doing the drive out to Starbase and then back to the Cape, but we shall see. Let's see here. Take a couple more questions. I'm just so embarrassed that I totally missed out on that pun. Well, I'll land the next one, just like Newglen.
Well, if I can pull one from the chat that I saw,
for
B1062 says, "Long live Ship 26."
No. Long
I
may
think-
it rest in pieces.
I must say, I think we're a little bit past that point, unfortunately, but I appreciate the sentiment.
I don't even appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the Sentinel launch earlier, but not the sentiment. As we see the booster continuing its roll towards the launch site there along Highway 4, Bayers wants to know, does SpaceX have any plans to expand the highway or upgrade it to move boosters, tankers, and ships potentially at the same time? Because I know pretty much anyone that's been at Starbase has been caught behind one of these SPMTs at one point or another.
Real quick, actually, I think it's kind of cool. In front of the SPMTs carrying the booster, Kevin pointed out there is just another SPMT moving along the road there.
Oh, it's empty. It's the ghost SPMT.
Yeah.
That is stopping the booster as well. Huh.
So, I believe that they have been looking at different options for road access and ensuring that they have continued access with minimal interruptions, but I don't believe there are any sort of solid plans for like a secondary road or a double wide road or anything like that at this point in time, because of course the area around there is all like a wildlife refuge, and so all of that is incredibly difficult to balance the environmental concerns and all that. We've seen that with the discussions of the water releases. There are a whole lot of things, and so that would be basically developing a bit more of the land that is wildlife refuge.
Yeah, and that takes quite a lot of permitting and public discussions. We haven't seen any of that recently at all, right? Never. So, yeah, we shall see. We've seen it at the Cape as well. Same thing's going to happen with 37 and any potential use of 49 or 50, all of that. So, the wildlife is important.
Absolutely.
Now, what is this vehicle that is trying to pass in the other direction? Is that a tanker that is just passing in the opposite direction?
It looks like it. It looks like it might have been trying to make a right turn there or pulling off the road. So that might be right by the Astropub. It's a little bit hard to tell. So it looks like it is able to get off to the side, stay out of the way, as the booster on those SPMTs continues its way down Highway 4.
I wonder if that's why they paused the whole parade there, still let that pass, pull off, and now continue as they are picking up speed again.
It's always impressive to me just how fast these SPMTs move with a massive booster on top of them, because with the scale of the booster, even when we like zoom in and see the people there, like it looks like it's moving somewhat slow, and then if you're standing on the side of the road there, it moves by pretty quickly, and you just have a couple seconds of opportunity to get the look like right up the booster.
Yeah, and that's what, 70 meters tall?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
It is beyond impressive how they do that. How does that compare, D, by the way, seeing this roll by to when you're out at 41 and you see Atlas or Vulcan roll by on the train tracks?
It's a little bit hard to compare them. So I think it's louder at 41 when Atlas and Vulcan are rolling by. Like, they give us hearing protection to wear for that, whereas these, I mean, you can start to hear them right now, and you're going to hear them more, and we'll be quiet as it gets really close to the microphones. But they're definitely not as loud, but in terms of scale, with both of them, you're basically just looking straight up, and you kind of lose that sense of scale at a certain point of just, all right, no matter how tall this thing is, I'm just looking directly up in order to see the top of it.
It's still a surreal sight. They're still just massive vehicles. We did get some support coming in from Ninja Decimator. Pew 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 pew. Saying, Sawyer, please stop with the puns. You'll end up on Santa's naughty list. To which I saw someone reply, he is the naughty list. And yeah, I've been on that list for quite a long time, and I'm just working my way higher up the naughty list. Which is good. I could use more coal.
I was trying to think of a good pun to integrate pun into that, and I couldn't.
Honestly, that's probably not a bad thing. You could stay on the nice list then.
All right.
Let's listen to the SPMT as it gets ready to roll on by here. An important point made. SPMTs don't skip leg day.
No, they do not.
Take a look as it pauses here. I saw someone asking, how are these powered? Is it diesel? Is it electric? How do the SPMTs power?
I honestly don't remember off the top of my head, but a really cool thing as they're going by is the way that they're controlled. It's not actually from someone inboard, it's from like people walking alongside them with a little handheld control unit.
It is, yeah, I love how it's just, it's like walking the dog, except instead you're walking the giant 70-meter booster. And yeah, it is mainly diesel, but it is electric hydraulics on it, but it does move with good old diesel.
And they're those cowbell vents.
Yeah, we've seen those evolve over the course of the recent flights. So it looks so clean and shiny. We'll see how it looks, hopefully, if it lands for Flight 7, which, what do you think, Dee? What are the odds of it being caught for Flight 7?
I was pessimistic with my estimates for both Flight 5 and Flight 6. For Flight 6, that served me well, and for Flight 5, I was very, very happy to be proven wrong. This time around, I'm gonna give it pretty good odds that they recover Booster 14 here.
By the way, that was the driver that we just saw walking behind it there. There he is. Just walking a booster. I think that they've learned whatever the tower issue was. I think they've got, obviously, the hardware and the programming down right. We saw the near-precise landing in the Gulf of Mexico, at least. Whatever that minor tower issue is, I think they'll easily get that fixed, and then we see a catch this time. So I think it's higher odds than Flight 5 we originally gave it. Maybe about the same as we thought for Flight 6.
I think I was giving Flight 6 about a 50 to 70% chance again, because I really didn't think Flight 5 was going to happen, and so I was like, not sure, but yeah, this time I'm feeling good. And now we did see after Flight 6 basically the little antenna tower on top of the tower itself was leaning over, and it looked like there had been a cable that was whipping around a little bit as the exhaust began to hit it. So I'm sure they're ensuring that all of that stuff is a little bit more launch proof.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of reinforcements done on that tower, and potentially maybe some design integrations then onto OLIT 2, and for sure down at the Cape. Which is crazy. They're working on things at the Cape, they're working on the other tower at Starbase, and they're rolling out this booster for Flight 7 already. The pace is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, not to spoil anything, but we definitely got a new perspective on things. We had with an elevated perspective on things today, so stay tuned for updates on what has changed and what is coming for the Cape.
Elevated things today as seen at 39A. Ooh.
Oh, and not just 39A. I won't say too much, though.
Yeah, we don't want to be called leakers here, so we cannot confirm nor deny anything that happened today. Also, a very good point was made. They didn't decorate the SPMT. I know Ryan Caton wanted a chance to break out his snowman profile picture again. Which is a bit of a thing.
You know, it is still early December. They also have a ship. Like, there's more that has to be moved around, that is for sure. So there is still time for them to decide to decorate an SPMT this year.
Oh, I hope they do. I want that snowman was too adorable. It needs to come back. I am not ashamed as a 30-year-old to call that snowman adorable. Just saying. Let's see here. Yeah, I saw ETC earlier was asking about the probability of everything going off without a hitch on Flight 7, because they said they were tempted to see it in person, been watching since SN8, and definitely want to head down soon. I guess, do we know yet? I don't even know if we know yet officially what the full Flight 7 goals are yet compared to Flight 6, obviously besides testing out version 2.
Yeah, it's a little bit up in the air. I don't believe they're going to go for a full orbital flight of ship. They're changing stuff around here, but they're there's definitely stuff that we are not quite sure of here.
It will be up in the air, D.
Oh my God,
Oh
Kevin.
my gosh, Kevin.
The voice of God, Kevin Michael Reed, coming in with the puns and leaving instantly.
And disappearing once again, just here and out.
Also, Trevor getting in on the pun action, saying, what's the difference between Booster 13 and 14? One number. So, yeah, the NSF team is out in full force with puns tonight, apparently. And, yeah, I gotta see if chat can out-pun some of us here at NSF. I'm sure they can. B1062 wondering, are the choppies... Oh my god. Are the choppies... I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't hate it. I haven't heard that before.
Me neither, surprisingly. Are the choppies ready for an immediate lift, or will that be tomorrow? I don't think we even know when that lift will be yet, but it doesn't seem like it'll be right away tonight.
Yeah, we've seen them do it both ways, where they just line up and go for lift, and then they've also just hung out at the launch site, waited for readiness. So we will wait and see. We'll get a better idea depending on how they position the booster once they arrive at the launch site. That'll give us a much better idea.
Yes. We will definitely see. And again, Starbase Live will have everything covered for that. And I can't get over choppies. I literally have it copied and pasted to save, just to remember that one. That's going on a flame trench for sure. I guess then the next question is, when static fire? What is your... Again, all of this is pure speculation, but just from your all-seeing, foreshadowing, projecting, stars aligning, when do you think?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if we have any road closures for any activities. That's the thing that we will be keeping an eye on to have a really good idea when they static fire.
Yeah, in terms of road closures, there is the 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. for today, which happened earlier. There is the roll happening now, which doesn't actually have a temporary closure. There's one from 12 to 4 a.m. Primary date that Highway 4 and Boca Chica will be closed is December 7th, with another primary date December 9th. And that is per next spaceflight, which you can download and visit now. So there are closures on December 7th and December 9th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central. So maybe sometime in that window we can see lift and static fire, hopefully? Or maybe we see a pressure test first and then a static fire?
Yeah, because they don't have to wait for any sort of closures for lifting itself. They can do the lift and get things somewhat ready well before then. But yeah, whether it is just a pressure test, whether they sort of speed up the process of moving to a static fire, but we could be 4 days away from that static fire.
And then, as we mentioned, the hope is that they will be able to actually keep this out on the pad to reduce the number of back and forths and probably clear up some megabase space as well to get the next boosters and everything ready, to leave it out there until it is mated with the ship.
Absolutely. It makes sense to just keep it out there. There's really no reason. They're continuing to do everything they can to improve. I don't know if cadence is the right term quite yet, but they are working on developing this vehicle with the goal of an incredibly low cadence. So they're going to continue just seeing, well, can we do this instead? If we cut off days here, like, they're going to continue developing every single thing that they can in order to just maximize that flight rate.
Exactly, and especially as we see the work there with the two towers, with the second tower up right there, lights flashing and everything. It's going to be interesting to see how they end up picking up the pace with all of that. How many of these boosters we need, to get going, to get the cadence up, all of that.
Yeah, I have seen a couple people in chat wondering if this is still version 1 of the booster. And we did mention at the start, yes, it is still a version 1 of the booster. This flight is a mix with the first booster version and the newer version 2 of the ship.
Exactly. So yeah, Ship 33 will be the second block variant, whatever you choose to call it. And then Booster 14 is Block 1. Someone pointing out, Gavin, saying, they won't leave it out there, there's more than a month between now and launch. And pointing out as well, it doesn't have the hot stage ring. Is that something they can now do at the pad?
I believe they have been able to do that at the pad, if I am not mistaken, because we did see... which flight was it? We saw grid fin actuators replaced, and all of that work happened at the pad.
Wasn't that Flight 2?
That sounds correct. Voice that has not been on stream before.
That also sounds like Mr. Trevor Sesnick joining us. Trevor, how's it going?
Pretty good. I thought it would be fun to just answer a question, but glad to be here. Missed the memo of rollout starting, but here I am.
Here he comes to save the day. But yeah, good to have you on, Trevor. I do want to thank some people here really quick first. Dimez, thank you for upgrading to Red Team membership. Hopefully you enjoy some of the photos that come along with that. And once again, Ninja Decimator, pew pew pew, coming through. When Yak in a kilt looking up B-14's kilt. I think we have a photo opportunity now for Flight 7. I want to see this during remote setup. I want to see a photo of Jack in a kilt looking up at Booster 14's engines. Just saying.
I think there might be a problem for that being during remote setup specifically. I believe a kilt might not qualify as operational dress.
Yeah, you typically need long pants and closed-toed shoes and all of that.
Yes.
Darn. We'll find a way. I'm sure sometime there will be a way to get Jack in a kilt near a booster. And then, got a couple people also with celebrating milestones. Mitsuo level, 35 months Capcom. Hot stage ring, where we're going. Wait, hot stage ring? We don't need hot stage rings where we're going. Nice. And Aussie Space Girl, 24 months, 2 years. Padrat, getting ready for Flight 7. Indeed we are. So, I was asking Dee this earlier. Trevor, what do you think are the odds of a successful catch of the booster on this flight?
I think it's pretty high. They obviously learned a lot from Flight 6 and having to abort into the Gulf of Mexico. I'm sure they learned a lot with the booster telemetry that they did get. And then, of course, they learned a failure mode of the tower that I'm sure they've gone ahead and fixed. So I would say it's probable. It's definitely not a guarantee, right? This is only the second or third attempt, depending on how you want to count it. But I would say it's like a 70 to 80% chance that they get it.
Pretty good odds there. I think that's probably right in the sweet spot, is about that 70% range. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable that we're saying that when they've caught one booster and we're like, yeah, they seem to have this problem solved.
Yeah, especially when it wasn't like the most recent booster that they caught. It was the first time they tried to catch it that they caught it, and then more recently they did not even attempt a catch, and we're all feeling reasonably confident in this next one.
I feel like you have to.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to be after the success on Flight 5, they got everything correct on Flight 6 from the looks of it with the splashdown, just the tower issue. So they should be able to kind of just extra secure things, would be my guess on that. Now, the next question is that we had heard that they would probably try one more flight of the ship before trying to catch it. Do you think we will see a catch, potentially, of the ship on Flight 8? Trevor first,
that's
then
what
D.
Elon. I think that's what Elon was saying on X, was that that's the plan, which I think honestly, it's definitely ambitious, like all SpaceX timelines, but it's definitely achievable. They've seen to, even with off nominal tiling, be able to reliably get the ship through entry at this point. So if they're just able to find a place to put the catch pins like they do on booster, I don't see any reason why the ship would be any harder to catch. But it's also entirely possible that they decide they need to do more work on TPS before they go for a ship catch.
What do you think, Dave?
I think 8 is possible, but a little bit optimistic. Like you said, they need everything to be right. The re-entry profile for the ship for a tower catch here would be basically over Mexico, over the Brownsville area, over the river area where we have our site. Like, it's over all these areas before coming down at the tower. So they need to have everything right. They need to make sure that it is all looking good, and that'll be an incredible view when it does happen. But in the same way that with the booster, they prioritized safety. They wanted to make sure all systems were good before they attempt it, and that's why we didn't see them attempt it with Flight 6, even though there is a chance that it could have worked all right. They wanted to make sure everything was right, and I'm sure they're going to go through that same thing with ship, but even more so because of that trajectory. And of course, they also have to reach orbit before they're returning to the same launch site for landing. So they've got a little bit of a ways to go before they are ready to catch a ship. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's my thought on it, is once we see 2 orbital flights, I think that third orbital flight is when we will see them go for the catch. One, to prove that they can do the orbit and deorbit it. A second, to prove that it wasn't a fluke they did it the first time. And then, now that they've proven orbit, then be able to actually go and try the catch for the ship. That would be my guess. So I'm thinking potentially that would be, 9 or 10? I know it's a little on the pessimistic side, but at the rate that they're planning on going for 2025, that's not that far away.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, in general, at least in my opinion, I'm curious if you guys agree or disagree with this, the last problem that remains to be shown in the Starship program is really the TPS. And I guess you could argue that propellant transfer is also there. But if they can get the TPS nailed next year, where they're able to actually get a ship to the point of being able to refly again, I mean, that is, I think, Starship proven that it is capable of full and rapid reuse in a couple of years once they have more data and whatnot. So, I mean, it is going to be very exciting to get a ship back and then start seeing them work on TPS to make it so that they can fly again with minimal refurbishment.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned with the propellants, if they were to fly, I believe, what is it, 1 Starship a day, or a couple Starships a day, the rate that Elon's planning, it would take up the entirety of the United States' production of liquid oxygen in a whole day. So they're going to have to work on propellants for once they get to that rapid pace. But for the current pace, yeah, being able to reuse is going to be key number 1. I mean, the fact that when we saw the Booster 12 come back, it looked pretty good. There was that little bit of charring kind of towards the top near the grid fins, but it still seemed relatively one piece. Whether they can do the same with the ship is going to be the next question.
It'll be harder, but I'm optimistic. So I'm curious if I can ask a question to you guys.
Uh-oh.
If they catch Booster 14, what testing do you think they do with it? Like, do they go for a static fire, or do they go all the way through for another flight?
I think they want to refly it. I think if they catch it, they will refly it. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I would expect a static fire before a flight, but I think the next booster that is caught will be reflown.
I'm going to slightly disagree. I think the next one they will absolutely static fire it, but I think the risk of reflying that one again, especially trying to prove the ship, trying to get on track for HLS with all of the pace they need, I don't think they do it with the second one that they catch. I'm sure they learned a lot after dissecting after the first catch. Obviously the warping of the engines, things like that. I think that the second time they're going to catch in static fire, and if everything stays in one piece, then I think we see them refly maybe 15.
I think
Also-
you're a little bit pessimistic here, I'm not going to lie.
Well, I think you're a little bit optimistic, which is actually probably a good trait, which is why you're awesome. Also, a TPS, that is the thermal protection system. Those are either tiles or thermal blankets or things that are used to protect spacecraft from re-entry heating. In the case of the ship itself, there are heat shield tiles on parts of it, and part of it is just the stainless steel. And thank you, B1062. Yes, I saved it. I mean, D is awesome, though. Now, the interesting thing also in the news today, I mean, there was the disappointing part that Artemis is going to be delayed till 2026. That part, yeah, it's a shame. They figured out what the issue is with the heat shield for Orion. They'll be able to modify the flight trajectory so that it's not as much an issue. But one thing they pointed out at the end was that they plan to have, if they can, some kind of potential joint operation with Artemis 2's launch and something with the Starship program. What are your thoughts on maybe seeing, a Starship around the moon at the same time, or a Starship in orbit in like a semi-mock rendezvous trajectory? What do you think the possibilities of that could be, Trevor?
I mean, it seems likely to me. I think SpaceX is going to try as hard as possible to not be a limiting factor in the Artemis 3 schedule. And so far, it's looking, I mean, if they keep the pace that they're on right now, it seems probable that they aren't going to be a critical path for Artemis 3. So I definitely could see them wanting to get more testing in on the Artemis 2 mission, and I'm sure NASA would love if SpaceX was willing to pay to get more data from the Artemis 2 mission. So I think it's probable, and I think it's honestly likely with all of these schedule delays, and I'm sure Artemis 3 is going to get delayed even more. I think it's very probable that SpaceX is not going to be the holdup, which is impressive given how recently they got the contract.
That is true, and how recently they've just gotten their first flight and are now going up to Flight 7, hopefully. D, what do you think? Is it a possibility that we see some kind of joint operations or simultaneous operations, at least, of Starship and Artemis 2?
SpaceX has developed so much in the last year and a half alone. They've done so much that I really wouldn't be that surprised. If I can be entirely honest, I wasn't able to listen into the latter portion of the press conference. I was quite busy at that time, but so I had not heard that until you mentioned it. But that is an exciting possibility for sure.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to at least kind of explain it for those who weren't able to see it earlier. And of course, a lot more depth will be dove into, if that's a word, on the Flame Trench tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm sure that's going to be a topic of discussion as we see the SPMT roll by once again.
I think we may see some Raptors.
I see a 3. I see a... What is that?
13.
That looked almost like a 313, but one of the 3s was backwards?
No, it's engine 13, so that's the engine slot. So that's not the Raptor number, but that's like the numbering of the engines on the vehicle.
Ooh, let's see. We got a good zoom in to try and see if we can see anything inside. It is tough to spot. They've gotten really good at trying to hide the booster numbers as long as possible. Which, darn them. How dare they? But you see that great up-close shot. Shout out to the team over at Starbase Live as well for all the robotic camera ops. I believe we have Roger helping out tonight with Kevin. And just shout out to the team that makes those cameras run. They do an amazing job.
Yeah, there you can see one of those engine shielding on the left of that right view. That's the shielding that's around each engine to help isolate any and all failures or leaks so that it doesn't, if one engine goes down, it doesn't knock out all of the engines around it.
Yeah, they learned their mistake from Flight 1.
They learned a lot from Flight 1, that's for sure.
I mean, yeah, that is true. The design changes have been quite drastic. But for the people asking, there's really not much change between this booster and the previous booster that we saw, other than a lack of engine chill pipes at the top per Ryan Weber in the back channel, which, again, the main thing is going to be the ship. And the reason you get rid of that is the Block 2 has the ship engine chill line running through the aft flap fairing, and it flares out at the bottom instead of going straight down. Thank you, Ryan Weber. Tony Z coming in with... Oh, go ahead. You go first. Then I'll talk to Tony.
I'm just going to say that we know Elon has said that there are thousands of small changes from B13 to B14. He didn't add on to that. So there definitely are differences. But he then also highlighted that the next big change in Booster is going to be with the Booster version 2, which he said is going to fly next year. And that's going to feature the next generation Raptor 3 engine. I think it's the same size, maybe a little bit stretched, and come with a lot of other upgrades. So I think for now they're just kind of waiting for that V2 of Booster.
Which they're still using the Raptor 2s, right?
Based on what Elon said, it sounds like Booster version 2 is going to have Raptor 3. But yes, B14 that is on our screen right now is version 2 of Raptor.
Compare that to the Raptors of Hopper or Hoppy in the bottom left. It's unbelievable how SpaceX has come along. And I just love this shot. It's like Hopper saying, "You're next, young Padawan. Good luck. Be like me. Come back in one piece." Anyway, Tony, I apologize. I was talking to you earlier. They had a super chat saying, if they catch Starship on Flight 8, how many tiles are missing after the catch? D, what do you think?
Definitely a non-zero number is my guess. But I'll say a handful. I'll leave it vague.
That's an Alex cop-out answer. Come on.
Hey, Alex's answer would have been 10 minutes.
Fair enough. But the result would have just been nothing. We love you, Alex. Trevor, you think we're going to see tile loss on the catch?
I mean, probably. But it also seems like on the previous few re-entries that we've seen, at least I haven't noticed that many missing tiles. It seems like they have the mounting mechanism pretty much solved, and I believe there are some slight iterations to it on version 2 of ship. But I think primarily at this point it's just figuring out how to stop the burn through some of those hot areas and less about keep making sure that the tiles are installed. So hopefully version 2 is able to fix a lot of these problems, but I wouldn't be surprised if it takes SpaceX a few more iterations to really make it so that the tiles none of the tiles fall off and make it so that there's no burn through anywhere.
I'm gonna say 8 and one of them is chipped, so 8.5.
I think that's a
not that many
pretty
tiles.
fair estimate. I said a handful, you say 8. I think that's fair.
8 and one of them chipped. That's what I'm going with.
Could you hold 8 tiles in a hand, though?
Yeah, you just have to stack them up, I'm
I
sure.
was gonna say 4 and 4, yeah. And also, I have the benefit of always being sitting, so I just stack them on my lap. Done. Win. Coco Cats, thank you for gifting a membership, and Apocalypse Cow gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you both so much. If you did get a gifted membership, please make sure to give them a thank you, and keep an eye out, because there might be some very cool photos that go out to Red Team members in advance of some video coming out very soon. And Gamer.io, Booster 14 rollout for first test. Yeah, and I mean, as we were mentioning earlier, Trevor, the hope is that this is the sole roll for 14.
Yeah, I think SpaceX definitely wants to continue to speed up the processes between flights, and part of that is going to be that they just roll the vehicle at once, static fire it, install the hot staging ring, put the ship on for some full stack. Well, I guess they didn't even really do that much full stack testing last time, just the partial load test, and then launch. They don't want to have to constantly be transporting booster and ship from the production site to the launch site and vice versa. So that's our hope. But again, it's definitely possible that SpaceX runs into some issue and wants to take a look at it closer at the production site.
And Gamer.io, it's totally cool. It happens. You lose track of all the booster numbers and everything. So I don't blame you. That's why we all have spreadsheets here.
Yeah, I always give myself a refresher, like, wait, which numbers again? Because it's so much to keep track of. Even just the Starship stuff is so much to keep track of, and then there are all the Falcon 9 boosters. There was one thing I wanted to mention earlier. We saw the light truck following behind the booster, and I think it's pretty cool that they have a truck with lights shining up at the booster. I feel like that's just for us to have great views as the booster rolls out, you know?
I love it. It's such a great addition that they do that. So shout out to the SpaceX team. And also, I think there's going to be something historic about this booster. I don't know why. I'm getting a marker that the thing that's about to go next to that arrow is historical. Totally nothing to do with 1800s and Rough Riders and all the other history and things that happened down in South Padre in that area. Can you tell we're a little loopy tonight, but always great to see this.
I honestly, I'm so used to seeing the historical marker signs, but I hadn't noticed it in this shot until you were well into your explanation, and then I saw it, and I was like, oh, that's the joke. Got it.
Yeah. Well, it's perfect timing. It works out with the getting into frame. And Eric asking, do we all have a shared Google Sheets, or do you each hoard your own data? I think we compare and contrast, but I know, Trevor, you have your own.
I have my own website for it.
Just as Alex has his own, I believe Adrian has his own. Try to think who else has their own spreadsheets, but I believe they're all individual with the goal of providing most of the same data.
Yeah, and they regularly are providing fact sheets to all of the commentators to keep up to date. And a great fact sheet for all of you to keep an eye on is NASASpaceflight, which has a lot of details for every launch with your trajectories and all that. Honestly, that's what I use most of the time for the super quick references. If I just have a quick question, that's where I go.
I wonder if
Hey,
the voice
Sawyer.
of God has something to say. Yes,
I
Kevin.
do. You noticed that I came in.
I did.
You did. You know, I think SpaceX also turned on the hazer tonight because the lighting is beautiful. Like, just the beam of light going through the sky, and it's happening all over the place.
Michael Bay would be jealous.
100%.
I love it. Now, let's pull Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. It looks like the night lighting. Everything's super oversaturated and brighter than it should be, but still pretty cool.
Thanks, SpaceX.
Thank you, SpaceX, for controlling the weather. Bye, Kevin. Kevin Michael Reed, ladies and gentlemen. Apocalypse Cow coming in with the support saying, so, Star Factory Boca constructs all flight articles and barges appropriate ones to Florida. Or another factory local to Florida. Awesome coverage as usual. Thank you, Apocalypse Cow. Always appreciate the support and always appreciate seeing your name. D as my fellow Floridian. What do you think? Barge 'em or build 'em?
I wouldn't be surprised to see a Starship barged. However, we're definitely getting Starship built here, right? Like, it's gonna happen.
I mean, yeah, it seems like they're working on the tower again finally, so they're preparing that. We've got the Roberts Road expansion, which there may be a potential way to see how far that progress has come, say early next week.
No comment.
It has been quite expansive, so I feel like you said, maybe 1 or 2 early on, but I think that Turn Basin is just going to see other rockets. I don't think it's going to see that many Starships, as cool as that would be. Trevor, I think that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I personally don't really see them transporting them. The Starship pad is so far out that I would imagine that they're able to get, especially if they start working on it soon, like they seem to be doing, it seems possible that they can get local production done in time for when 39A is ready for Starship testing. And that would leave Boca Chica and its hopefully 2 launch pads by mid next year for with just the production site local, and it would remove the headache of having to transport these vehicles. But we'll see. SpaceX likes to prove me wrong, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll see one built. We're definitely going to see them built from the Cape. I guess it's just a question of if they barge any of them prior to that first launch. My thought is going to be the first one that launches is the first one that's built at KSC. That's my prediction.
So
Gamer.io.
MK2.
Oh, go ahead, Trevor. Sorry.
No, I was asking a question. So MK2.
Okay. 2.
No, Mark II. You said the first one built in Florida is the first one that launches. Mark II was built in Florida.
Then I think we will see Mark II launch from Florida, and I guess built in Florida. Is it wrong for me to say Mark II?
Oh, God.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was nice working here at NSF. Pleasure to know everybody.
I'm just getting absorbed in these different camera angles and the lighting because the spotlight here is really, really good with that haze. I did see one question about if it was pointed at something in particular, and it's basically pointed at where the booster will be, is my best understanding of it. I think Sawyer was forcibly taken off of this stream momentarily, hence why I jumped in here, but he may be back now.
Was I server muted?
I didn't do it.
Oh, goodness gracious. I apologize for that. I regret my decision because now that is on the internet forever.
It sure is. Though that was a choice.
Gamer.io saying, last chat. First deployed payload will be, ? I'm going to say Starlink V2 full size. Or V3, whichever the larger size is.
I'm fully confident that it will be a Starlink satellite of some sort.
Trevor?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And Ethereal Swordsman with a question for you, Trevor, with the $5 super chat.
How
Did we
did they
just-
find this?
Did we just accidentally find out in the Discord that you are in fact a speed cuber?
Is a bit of a stretch. Back in my middle school and early high school days, I was obsessed with Rubik's Cubes and decreasing my time.
Wait, I did not know this. How
didn't
did they
either.
find out?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Apparently something in the Discord.
Oh my, I want to know how this happened.
Yes.
I
Also-
don't think I have anything on my YouTube channel anymore.
You need to teach me how to solve a Rubik's Cube because I don't know how.
Okay. Next time I see you, I will. I used to be like fairly decent. I think my fastest solve is like a little over like 10.2 seconds or something like that, which is like not that good, but I don't know.
Well, I
I
couldn't
couldn't
do it in 10.2 hours, so
It used to be called the Speed Cube King in middle school.
My fellow middle schoolers did not like me and my friend constantly playing with them in the back, making noise.
I mean, yeah, the clicking is actually very satisfying nowadays, but yeah. Tony Z coming in with the $10 super here. This is interesting, and this will absolutely be delved into in full detail during Flame Trench tomorrow. I won't be on, but you've got Jack and EJ, so expect chaos. With Jared Isaacman as NASA administrator, does he ride Starship while admin or after? We know he's guaranteed a seat in the future. My guess would be after, because there's still the discussion of an additional, what's it called, Polaris Dawn flight? Or so Polaris 2?
Polaris. Yeah, not Polaris Dawn. Another Polaris flight.
Polaris Midday, yeah.
Yeah.
And then with Polaris Dusk being the the last one. They're 2 and 3, by the way. I'm just joking with the names. But those might get pushed slightly as a result, or maybe he's off of Polaris 2, but I still think he flies on Polaris 3. I wouldn't see him missing a chance to fly on Starship, potentially after his reign is done at NASA. D?
yeah. I fully expect that he will fly after. I think the chance of him flying on Starship while admin is a bit low, for sure. I could see Polaris 2 being close to the end of his term, because that's a lot less sort of development. But I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of things that could change as a result of this. I think there are a lot of potential upsides to him being NASA administrator. That is for sure, and I'm sure that sort of stuff is going to be talked about tomorrow in depth.
Oh, absolutely. So this will be interesting to see whether he ends up flying in office. I don't believe he will personally.
Yeah.
I think, his focus is going to be on getting the flight cadence and, getting more science missions hopefully approved, because he's very much a science-oriented person and all about advancing the science objective, getting more people in space, getting more people to space, connecting more people on Earth with space. So I think he can do a lot more work in those 4 years on Earth than he would if he flew during that time. And those are my hashtag opinions only. These are not representative of anyone else, that's just my thoughts.
I think it's really exciting. Jared seems to have this desire for progress in spaceflight, and I think that's exactly what NASA needs, is just this laser focus on supporting missions that are progressing humanity forward, and not just having it be a jobs program like it has been for the last however many decades. So I'm certainly optimistic about it. I hope that between Jared and Elon's involvement, they are able to make some pretty large changes to how NASA works, but it's also the government. It's intentionally, the people's power is very intentionally limited, so who knows how much they'll actually be able to do.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. An interesting question here came in, and I believe I know the answer to this one off the top of my head, but we shall see. And that is from View Publishing, who says, how many other administrators have been in space? And my understanding, from my knowledge, is 2. You had Charlie Bolden, who was on the crew that deployed Hubble. And then you have Bill Nelson, who flew while he was a senator. So from my recollection, at least, of those that have actually flown in space... 3. I forgot about Dick Truly, excuse me. So 3 have flown in space that I can recall off the top of my head looking at the list. If I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will correct me in chat, but I believe it's 3.
I think I saw that on X that it was 3, but don't know for sure.
My computer is frozen a bit, so if one of you wants to find a question while I try and get things to click again, let me know.
Candace is wondering if B14 is bigger than B13. Nope, it's almost identical. It's missing its hot staging wing right now, so it'll actually get a little bit taller. About 1.8 meters taller, if I remember correctly, once they put its crown on before the ship.
Yes, and apologies, Averail. His full name is Richard Truly. That should not get caught by Nightbot. And then also, if you're talking deputy administrators, things like that, and you also have Pam Melroy, who's currently active as the deputy administrator, who was the who flew on, I believe, STS-118 and a couple other missions. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. So yeah, a bunch of people who have headed NASA have flown to space. Here's one from John. Trevor, do they still cryo boosters at Massey's?
Yes. All cryogenic testing is done at Massey's, and as is ship static fire, and I imagine eventually we will see booster static fire out there, but that'll require a new pad and equipment and whatnot, so that's probably a ways out. But I think long term, they want to have Massey's be for all of the testing, just like how McGregor does all of the testing for Falcon stuff, and then go from have the launch pad be just for launching, similar to how Falcon no longer does static fires on launch pad.
That's a good point. Virtual Super Soldier wondering, why roll it out so early if there won't be another flight till next year? Is it just for testing? I mean, we know they're trying to pick up the cadence, but that is a good question, given it's near the saltwater and all that. Why just leave it on the OLM till potentially no earlier than January 11th, D?
Yeah, so, like you said, they've got a lift, they've got a static fire to do, and then what's the purpose of bringing it back? Why would they bother? Because if they can clear out room in their megabays, we know that they are shuffling and moving ships and boosters around in order to continue building out, and they are even going so far as to destroy Ship 26 to make more room, which,
Yes.
if they could do that, they might as well keep the booster out there, avoid the time of bringing it back and forth. Plus, that's extra road closures. They have to do more work with the sheriff. Like, there's a whole bunch of extra complication, whereas if the booster can just sit out there, just let it sit out there.
Yes, and adios, Ship 26. Good riddance. Here's one from Apocalypse Cow with the $10 super chat. Unimportant question. I don't think many questions are unimportant, and this one definitely is not. Why strobes on Tower 1, but none on topped-out Tower 2? I would think the FAA or whoever might require both. Trevor, have we seen the flashing lights on the second tower yet?
I feel like I'm quite confident yes, but now that you ask that, I am second guessing myself, but I'm pretty sure we have, and I have absolutely no idea why there would be a different number of lights.
I think they do. I know just recently at the Cape, they had been updating that tower, and the Starship Tower 39A now also has the two blinking white lights in addition to the flashing red lights. I would think the same with Tower 2. Again, it's one of those where you see it so many times and you end up guessing yourself of, wait, did they? Is this just like the Berenstein Bears where you think it's spelled one way and it's totally not?
And it could be the sort of thing that we end up seeing at a later point in time. Of course, they've got a lot of work on Pad B or Tower 2 or Pad West, depending on who you're talking to.
Not Pad West. That's just wrong.
I don't know. I think there was an official document that referred to it that way. So,
in honor of the late Adam West, that's why. Also, now I've started an argument about the Berenstein or Berenstain Bears. That blew my mind too when I first saw that. But anyway, with the second tower, I mean, at least you have Tower 1 right now flashing, which I think acts as a good indicator for aircraft flying by, which is the primary purpose, is to notify aviators of tall structures. So I think maybe that's not as much of a rush, but once it gets more operational, I'm sure we will see the same flashing lights. Because even just looking on the left side of your screen there, you can see the parts that are lit up on the second tower line up with the flashing lights on the first tower. Let's see here. Again, so now we have the booster right near the chopsticks. I was asking Dee this earlier, so Trevor, I'll throw it to you. When lift?
My guess would be probably tomorrow. I don't see why they would spend any time before doing it. The pad seems to be ready, so may as well get it on there and start booster testing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like maybe daylight ops, although they've tended to like doing lifts at night recently just to annoy us. But I could see them doing it at some point tomorrow. And a reminder, they don't need any road closures for these lifts, correct?
absolutely. We've been out there for lifts. We've seen them do ship stacking from the dunes, from the road, from all these locations, so they can sort of just put it on off the tower as needed. And so it's a really cool thing to see. It's one of the few opportunities to get an excellent view of the engines prior to launch itself.
Yeah, that's when we get the goods also of trying to figure out the engine numbers and compare them, because I know there were rumors of an engine that was potentially reused on the last flight, which is not true, but to see if there are any engine numbers that we recognize on this one. And Kevin Michael Reed pointing out that it did go straight into the chopsticks, rather than nearby or just outside of them. Oh god, Top Banana, I'm so sorry I said that out loud. When Mark II.
Hopefully the next time the booster is in between the chopsticks, it is under its own power.
That would be nice, yeah. Tom pointing out there was an electrical short or something on the Tower 2 last week, may have taken out the power to the upper strobe. Possible, but also when we see the view, it's just it doesn't seem like anything strobing. It seems like they're more solid up to this point. Let's see. Yeah, I was wondering, is SpaceX planning to collect oxidizer out of the atmosphere at Starbase to decrease the hassle of bringing in all those trucks in? Would that be too expensive? Trevor, do we expect to see a unlocks manufacturing potential at Starbase?
Yeah, I do think long term we will see the air separator that will produce both liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen. I know we have seen in the latest environmental assessments at the Cape they are still wanting to do this. I think they've removed them from the environmental assessments at Starbase. However, that's always something that can be added back. So I do think long term they will want to do that because, as you were saying earlier, for the launch cadence that SpaceX wants, they would need an unprecedented amount of liquid oxygen. So they would need to either have a company start building up manufacturing of it or just do it themselves. And SpaceX seems to prefer to do things themselves.
That is true. And again, with over 100 trucks being needed to be brought in for each flight, if you're talking about rapid turnaround, you absolutely have to find a way to be able to produce your own, or at least get it faster and not being reliant upon other companies. So I think that's something that we absolutely have to see in the future. Also, I want someone tomorrow, or multiple people would be great, to send messages and ask a question during the flame trench that Sawyer wants to know when, Mark II said the funny way. I want to hear Jack say it on air. Forget the kilt. I just want to hear Jack say that, and I will be very happy. Sorry, I had to. Also, it was pointed out that was my punishment as a Ship 26 hater.
This is true.
I mean, yeah, I am. I'll admit it, even though I ended up editing the in memoriam video. But yeah.
That was your punishment as well.
Yeah, such a punishment.
I had to ask the biggest hater to edit that video.
You had to.
I was so glad I could at least wear black in honor of Ship 26. I couldn't assist in any other way, but
I have a question. How long are we going to be talking about Ship 26? Like, are we just going to, a flight number 100, we're still going to remember Ship 26?
I think it'll go down with time. I think that'll depend on how much chat remembers it and brings it up. Because I don't try to bring it up unnecessarily, but we just get random mentions in chat, and so if I see Ship 26 mentioned,
it's like and then we have to relive the pain all over again.
Exactly,
right?
and then Sawyer just throws salt in the wound, and so suddenly I need to be louder about it.
Hey, I can't throw salt in my own surgery wound, so I gotta throw them somewhere, okay?
Oh.
Take that! Yes, for those who don't know, I've been recovering from surgery. I am flat once again, so I've been laying down through all of this, but yeah, as pointed out by Logitech, you can always rely on Sawyer to stir the pot. I do love doing that, yes. Who said that's a Sawyer flex? I'm impressed, actually. That is, I guess, a flex in a way. And yes, Jake, as we speak, is using me as a bed. He is currently laid up next to me. Oh, goodness gracious. This designation Ship 26 will never be retired. I think as long as Kevin Michael Reed is here, then we will never hear the end of Ship 26.
Absolutely.
He made AI write a song about it, for goodness sake. Let's see. Here's an interesting question. Once we do see orbit, how long would Starship be in orbit before coming down to be caught with currently the singular tower? Trevor, what do you think?
So I think it would depend. Right. It would be substantially longer than booster because you not only have to obviously go around the Earth to reach the pad again, but you also need to be on the right plane so that if you deorbit into the correct spot, and that's not going to happen on every orbital cycle. So I don't know the exact time, but I've heard estimates that it would be about 6 hours, but it really depends on the individual launch. I'm trying to think. I feel like I had another thought in my head, but hopefully that somewhat answers it.
I think it does. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of orbital mechanics and timing, which is also going to make the launch window very interesting. Right now, they typically give themselves a 30-minute window within which to launch. I think that's going to change as we see them try for these orbital flights, especially with a catch of the ship.
I don't think the catch of the ship will determine the launch window that much, but there'll obviously have to be like an entry window that they can target to bring the ship back. And then I imagine at first they'll want to bring the ship back as quickly as possible, so they don't have the propellant sitting there in orbit for too long. But then longer term, and as they start doing more and more complex missions, we'll see them increase that time.
That is true, yeah. That's a good point. Let's see, Ethereal Swordsman with the super chat. We were talking about how there's not that many irrelevant questions. There are some, but I'm still going to ask it anyway. Ethereal Swordsman, what is your favorite Pokemon game/game pair? Their favorite is Black and White. D?
So, I'll name the two that I grew up playing the absolute most, which were the Game Boy Yellow Special Pikachu Edition and Emerald Green. Those were absolutely my go-tos, and I don't even remember what my max level Pokemon I got to, but I spent a lot of time playing both of those.
My first ones were Red and Yellow, and I loved Yellow because I loved and still love Pikachu, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Until I found my favorite game pair, which was Ruby and Sapphire for the Game Boy Advance. I played the ever-living crud out of those. I loved it. I think Sapphire was the first Pokemon game that I ever fully completed. So, yeah. Do I dare ask, Trevor?
I have absolutely zero clue what you guys are talking about.
Have you ever played a Pokemon game?
No.
Not even Pokemon Go?
No, Pokemon Go seems especially dumb.
I think that's the perfect time for the play-out music, because I think D and I otherwise would be speechless. I want to thank everyone that joined us here tonight for the role of Booster 14. D-Wise, thank you for being with me.
Of course, it was a great evening to hang out and watch this roll.
Absolutely. Trevor Sesnick, thank you for joining as well.
Of course. I'm excited to see Flight 7, hopefully in a little over a month.
Oh, January 11th, no earlier than. And then, of course, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers is Kevin Michael Reed, of course, assisted by some of the fantastic members that we have over at Starbase Live. I believe tonight Steven and Roger were also doing some work with cameras for us, so shout out to the awesome team behind the scenes that help make all this happen. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I've been your host for this dedicated stream. Thank you everyone for joining. I apologize for half the things I've already said. Make sure you follow us on the socials, on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of those, to get the latest updates sent right to you. But until our next stream, I will talk to you all later. Bye, everybody.
No!
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
RTPA chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, with Planet.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting down to SPMT off. Bring in SPMT off. It's orange!
45! Oh my god!
Décollage.
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
If there's methane, it'd be igniting in the flare, correct?